order, okay? But the alternative to that was might makes right, was basically whoever's strongest, go take what you want and we'll just fight it out. And after a whole series of world wars, called the war that killed 70 million people and blew the entire industrial world off the face of the map, we decided, let's try something else. It isn't perfect, all right? Not everyone follows the laws all the time, but it seems like what the U.S. has said is we're going to dump that entirely, and we're going to take what we want, when we want, and how we want, and the rest of the world can go to hell. I don't think that's going to end well. So I would like to see some kind of plan as to how other tools in our toolbox, other than just the military, diplomacy, aid, foreign aid, which of course we decided to cut off food and healthcare from hundreds of thousands of people so that they starved to death. That doesn't help either. Are there other tools that we think about other than just coercion, violence, force, and the use of the military? I think there should be. And I guess the final question I want you to consider is, when President Trump was running for office, he said over and over and over again, I'm not going to do wars. In fact, he very specifically said, if I'm president, we will not go to war with Iran. And here we are. So I'm genuinely curious, what changed? What changed from when he was a candidate to when he was in office that has led us to the level of conflict that we are now experiencing? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the ranking member. I'd now like to introduce our witness, Mr. Elbridge Colby, is the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. Thank you for being here, Mr. Colby. You are recognized.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Smith, thank you for the opportunity to appear before the distinguished members of this committee to testify on the Department of War's 2026 National Defense Strategy. The animating purpose of this strategy was to put into reality the logic of President Trump's common sense, America first, peace through strength approach. At its heart, as detailed in the 2025 National Security Strategy issued by the White House, this approach is channeled through the principle of flexible realism. That is, the effort to practically and realistically advance and protect the concrete interests of regular Americans. The core of a strategy, as the National Security Strategy eloquently describes, is to evaluate, sort, and prioritize. Needless to say, this is of special importance in the realm of war and peace. The heavy responsibility of effectively doing so motivated our work at the department to produce the 2026 NDS, and we believe under Secretary Hegseth's leadership that we have done so. Under President Trump's leadership and with your support in the Congress, the American military is and will be the world's finest, an unmatched fighting force that has impressively demonstrated its prowess in recent months, Operations Midnight Hammer, Absolute Resolve, and now Epic Fury. At the same time, we recognize that, as Secretary Hegseth has aptly put it, we cannot do everything everywhere all the time. This is, of course, a practical reality. The American military, while without peer, is not infinite in its application and resources. Potential opponents have been building their strength and capabilities, and it is not fair, just, or sustainable to ask the American people to bear burdens that are inequitably distributed with those of our allies and partners. As a result, we must prioritize, and this strategy does so. It does not do so in a way that is pinched or hesitant. Instead, it does so in a way that prudently and practically navigates between two unreasonable extremes. On the one hand, an isolationism that pretends that we can retreat from the world and that a favorable stability will emerge. And on the other hand, an unfettered use of military force for overly expansive ends that would drain the American people's will and resources in unnecessary and overly ambitious conflict. This strategy rather prudently adopts a middle course that will actually put us on a far firmer, more successful, and thus more lasting course than either of these extreme alternatives. In particular, the NDS does so, we contend, by intelligently and strategically allocating our resources and that of our incredible armed forces towards the priorities that most affect regular Americans and where our efforts are most material and necessary to achieve American interests in the world. This is a reflection of common sense, America first thinking. As a deduction, the strategy is built on 4 pillars. First, it restores, after decades of neglect by some administrations, the military's role in securing our homeland and ensuring that our key interests in our native hemisphere are protected. This is critical for regular Americans because we must ensure that we are directly protected and secure in our own home area. While the military is only a part of this effort and often far from the leading element, it does play a critical role that will be enduring. Second, the strategy focuses our military effort on ensuring the preservation of a favorable balance of power in the Indo-Pacific, the world's largest market area. America's interests there are real and significant because of the scale of that market. At the same time, our interests are not limitless. We do not need to dominate that region. Rather, we only need to prevent that vast and dynamic area from being dominated itself so that we can trade and interact with it on fair and reasonable terms for regular Americans. As a result, our strategy there is to deter China through strength, not confrontation. We understand that China is a very powerful country that is undertaking an extraordinary military buildup. That is a simple fact. At the same time, we are clear that we do not seek conflict with China. To the contrary, we seek to avoid it. We make clear that our interests with respect to China are scoped and reasonable. We do not seek to strangle China nor compel a change in its form of government. Rather, we seek to prevent China from becoming the hegemon of the Indo-Pacific. In particular, this requires, as the national security strategy clearly states, being able to deny the feasibility of successful aggression along the First Island chain. Because of its significance and the central importance of the military role in meeting this requirement, meeting this standard of an effective denial defense along the First Island chain is the primary focus of the U.S. Armed Forces. At the same time, ensuring our forces can pace to this challenging standard will ensure that the department can always offer the President the operational flexibility and agility required for other objectives, especially the ability to launch decisive operations against targets anywhere, including as we see today in Operation Epic Fury. It is critical to emphasize here that our strategy is aligned not only with the interests of our allies in the Indo-Pacific, but with many other countries as well that are not formally our allies. These states seek to preserve their autonomy and thus their ability to chart their own national futures on their own terms. This too is our goal, as Secretary Hegseth eloquently laid out last year at the Shangri-La Forum. And our military focus, alongside the efforts of our allies and partners, is designed to uphold that ability. Third, we recognize clearly that there are other real threats around the world that imperil our allies and indeed our own interests directly. We do not neglect that. To the contrary, we see it clearly. But we also understand that we need to allocate our own resources realistically and prudently, and that we must account for our allies and partners' ability and will to meet those challenges as well. This is why the strategy so strongly emphasizes burden sharing, which is its third pillar. The logic here is to encourage, enable, and wherever necessary, to press our allies and partners in other theaters to take primary responsibility for their conventional defense. This makes sense because, as is so often pointed out, we are allies with many of the world's largest and most advanced economies. As a result, we do indeed have an alliance network that has tremendous latent military power. Unfortunately, over the last generation, partially due to our own permissiveness and perhaps even hubris on this point, many of our allies have functionally demilitarized. This is untenable and unreasonable, and the fact is that our allies know it and are moving rapidly and substantially to step up. They are no longer, because of President Trump's leadership, fighting the scenario. Rather, they have now accepted they must step up and are beginning rapidly to do so. As a result, our approach has adapted to one of let's get down to business. In Europe, we are urging our allies to move to a model of NATO 3.0, in which wealthy European allies take the lead for the conventional defense of European NATO. On the Korean Peninsula, we are urging our South Korean ally to do the same vis-a-vis North Korea. And the good news, distinguished members, is that this is working. Our allies are indeed stepping up along these lines. Now the issue is helping them do so and making this transition as rapidly and effectively as possible, which is indeed our focus. In other regions, we are also urging and seeing progress with our allies. Along the First Island chain, with countries like Japan and Australia, we are urging these wealthy and capable allies to do their part for collective defense, as the NSS urges. In the Western Hemisphere, we are working with many like-minded countries in the region to address shared threats to our prosperity and well-being, as today's conference in Miami demonstrates. And in the Middle East, we are actively working with our model ally, Israel, and other regional partners to address the threat of Iran and terrorism, indeed the very purpose of Operation Epic Fury. The final pillar of the strategy, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, is to supercharge the defense industrial base. The NSS and NDS, and I stress this, both call for a national mobilization of our industrial capacity to arm both our own forces and those of our allies and partners. As you on this committee know so well, this is vital because we must be able to arm our own forces and those of our allies and partners with the best weaponry quickly, at scale, and at a reasonable price. We are seeing tremendous progress on this front thanks to President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, and Deputy Secretary Feinberg's efforts, as well as your support and leadership in Congress, but this will be a critical continuing area of focus in the coming years. In closing, this strategy promises, under President Trump's leadership, to put our country and our allies and partners on the path to lasting security. In just a few years, we can expect the warfighting ethos to have been restored in our armed forces and for them to be armed with the most modern, effective weaponry at scale. We can expect our wealthy allies and partners around the world to have stepped up to do their part for collective defense and their own security. We can expect our potential opponents to see the peerlessly formidable armed forces of the United States and the highly capable forces of our allies and partners together, and to conclude that peace and restraint is the better course for them. Thus, we can very much reasonably hope for a decent peace for Americans, for our allies, and for that matter, for our potential opponents. This is a very good future to which we can reasonably aspire. At the same time, however, we at the Department of War know that we cannot take this future for granted. To the contrary, we will hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. We will ensure that our armed forces are as ready as they can possibly be in line with the priorities outlined. Should our potential opponents spurn this reasonable offer, members of this committee, your support in ensuring that our forces are ready will be absolutely vital. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, and I'll recognize myself for questions. I have, over the last couple of years, spoken repeatedly with General Grinkowicz, the EUCOM commander, his predecessor at EUCOM, General Cavoli, and U.S. Army Europe Commander Donahue about the decision to withdraw the brigade from Romania. All of them made the assessment this would increase NATO's risk in deterring their posture against Russia, but it also sent a terrible signal about the United States' commitment to NATO. General Cavoli, in fact, last year when he testified before us in the posture hearing, left absolutely no doubt during that hearing that it was his best military advice that we keep that 5th Brigade in Europe. Then we had President Trump state 2 days before the decision was made that there would be, quote, no significant changes to U.S. force posture in Europe. And then also we had Secretary Rubio told his Romanian counterpoint 2 weeks, the very same thing. When I was in your office, I told you there was overwhelming bipartisan support in Congress for keeping our posture in Europe at 5 brigades. It's clear to me that you decided that pushing your agenda on U.S. force posture without interagency coordination and without regard to the president's opinion or Congress's was the way to go. Can you explain to me how you arrived at that position?
Thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. Let me, I categorically assert that I was straight with you in our discussions, and I commit to be. So that just kind of lay flat, as they say in the Pentagon on that point. Let me reassure you emphatically that I'm a loyal lieutenant of the president, and we don't do anything in the Department of War that is not aligned with the president. I am not in the chain of command, sir. So when you say you, I can only infer that you are referring to President Trump's Department of War. I stay very, very closely tied in with Secretary Hegseth, who is, of course, with the president essentially every day, whether directly, physically, or otherwise. So let me just stress once again, sir, that these are the policies of the Trump administration. I am a loyal lieutenant of the president, and we follow his instructions on this issue as others. On the specifics of the matter, sir, a couple things. This decision was coordinated through normal channels within the Department of War and did receive best military advice. And in fact, some of the, I will say, some of the reasons for doing it was the significant stress on the Army forces that were deployed there. So that was actually some of the, in fact, we all heard about it directly. And without getting into individuals, because it's deliberative within the executive branch, I have a different understanding of the best military advice provided by some of our commanders. So happy to go into that.
So we aren't competent to hear best military advice in this committee.
I'm sorry?
You're telling me that we aren't competent to receive best military advice?
I'm not saying that at all. You're absolutely competent.
I mean, General Cavoli sat in that chair and told us that it was his best military advice.
General
He was
Cavoli
the
did.
EUCOM commander. His successor told us the very same thing.
I'm not questioning your integrity in this, sir, but I heard something different in terms of when we made that decision. So without getting into personalities.
Okay.
And then actually, sir, and I won't quote the individual specifically, but a very relevant senior European official actually said that this was a very beneficial signal. I heard that about several weeks ago, and it's demonstrated to
Who said
Europeans
that?
that they need to set. Sir, I don't think, I was asked not to, maybe in closed session we could go into it, but I can give you chapter.
We'll have a
on that
closed
point.
session right after this.
Okay.
I look forward
Happy to
hearing
do that, sir.
All right. The decision, as I understand it, to remove that brigade was made on October 24th. Our committee was formally notified on the 27th. How can you characterize telling us 3 days later that that's consultation with Congress, which you are constitutionally required to do when it comes to force posture decisions like that?
Sir, I'd have to get back to you on the details, but we take our duty to consult with Congress very seriously. Obviously, we're focused on preserving the president's. I know you share the desire to preserve the president's decision space, and we want to make sure we do that, as well as Secretary Hegseth's. But you can rest assured, in fact, my office, just in the last 4 or 5 months, I think has done upwards of 100 touches, both with your committee and the Armed Services Committee, as well as Senate Armed Services Committee, as well as with other parts of the Congress. So I would actually go so far as to say our organization is one of the leaders in congressional engagement.
We see that completely differently. It's been like pulling
I'd be
teeth trying
delighted,
get
sir, to make sure
information
that we
from your
rectify
office.
that. I know Ms. Earl.
And the SASC has had the same public statements that it's been difficult to get information from your
I think,
office.
sir, if I could maybe just say on that, if you look at, for instance, some of the leading members of the SASC, they've actually said that we have been doing a much better job. And we're not perfect. I certainly don't say that, sir. So welcome feedback. And, it was very good to meet with Ranking Member Smith. I'd welcome meeting members from throughout. I know met with some of the members here. So, we're available.
All right. Well, I still feel strongly that I concur with the last two UCOM commanders and General Donahue that we need 5 brigades in UCOM. Having said that, we're at 4 now, thanks to the decision that came out of your department. Now, on September 25th of 2020, September 3rd of 2025, President Trump welcomed the Polish president to the White House. During that visit, when asked by a reporter whether the United States would continue stationing troops in Poland, President Trump responded, quote, "We'll put more there if they want. We'll stay in Poland. We're very much aligned with Poland, period," close quote. Do you agree with the president's position that the United States will, at a minimum, maintain the 2 armored brigades that are currently in Poland?
Mr. Chairman, you can rest assured that I will absolutely implement the president's guidance on that matter as on others.
Okay, so we will not be dropping below 4 brigades in UCOM in the foreseeable future.
Sir, I want to be careful to preserve the president's decision space, and I'd have to go back and specifically look at what the president said and the instructions he's given us. But my point is that we will absolutely, I make it a point of pride and a point of focus to ensure that we're tightly aligned. We do that through, I particularly through Secretary Hegseth, who's with the president every day. So we have a very, very tight alignment with the president, and this is his defense strategy. This is his War Department, obviously with the Congress, needless to say. But you can rest assured, sir, that we are in tight alignment with President.
I have a real concern about that. When 2 days after the president said there'd be no significant changes in U.S. force posture, you announced that you were taking a brigade out of there. But now,
I would just stress, sir, that the Department of War, and I would once again stress that I'm not in the chain of command. So those decisions, I'm not even, and I don't presume to a level of authority that I have not been given by the Congress and the president. So I just, I'm here to represent the Department of War. These are decisions by the Department of War under presidential guidance.
Well, I just want you to know, going forward, we feel very strongly that Congress has a say-so in these matters, and we're going to help y'all understand that in the coming months and years.
Thank you. Fully understood,
Ranking
sir.
Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of different ways to ask this question, but the bottom line is, what does success look like in Iran? Basically, what are the objectives that we are trying to achieve, and what does it look like when we go, okay, we've achieved our objectives, success, we're done, we're out?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We're thinking a lot about this. I would say I can give you the perspective from the Department of War, which represents the direction that the president has given for the military campaign, which is specifically focused on degrading and destroying the power projection, particularly the conventional power projection capabilities of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and thus especially missile one-way attack drones capabilities and their production, as well as the naval forces of the Islamic Republic.
How destroyed does it have to?
Well, I think that's, I mean, we're going to seek to do the best we can. I think we're on plan, as Admiral Cooper has said. I think that can nest with a variety of political outcomes, as the president referred to the other day. The
Two
Venezuela
parts to
model.
that. I keep hearing that we're on plan, and I keep asking, and this is oversimplification, but I don't know, they had 10,000 missiles, now they have 8,000. And I keep getting told, yeah, we don't really have those specific information yet. So how do we know that we're on plan if we can't
Well,
get
we don't want to repeat, the mistakes of McNamara and a false kind of numeracy to it. But I would say that, we are looking at the strategic level. And I know some of the both civilian and uniform representatives will be briefing you in classified session later today. So obviously those numbers are important, but we're looking more at a strategic level at degrading the capabilities of the Islamic Republic, not only fielded forces, but the production
The
capabilities.
lack of specifics on that are troubling in terms of how long this is going to last. And then the second piece of it is what you alluded to, which is, okay, so we've done this before. I mean, we did it a year ago. Israel did it over the course of 2 years and significantly degraded Iran at a much lower cost in terms of the regional war. But when that's done, if the Islamic Republic is still there, they will simply rebuild. So what is the objective to prevent that from happening?
I don't think that's a given at all.
Well, it's not a
sir.
given, but what's the
Right.
objective?
No, I think
How
it's
do we get to the
precisely
point where
to
it doesn't
avoid the
happen?
Islam. I mean, as Secretary Hegseth said, part of this, and I think Secretary Rubio as well, was, the Iran was building a conventional shield to enable a recovery of its nuclear ambitions. And so obviously, as part of the, end state, without being too kind of linear about it, is to prevent an outcome where they don't have the incentive. And that's where the Venezuela model, I think there's a realistic sense. We have learned the lessons of Iraq and not being overly
You
ambitious.
understand that comparing Iran to Venezuela is like, I don't know, comparing Kentucky to Venezuela. It's equally valid. Iran.
I don't think it's a perfect analogy, sir, but I
Yeah.
think I'm just making a point about it in terms of the flexibility of the political objective. And of course, the president has said it's a fact, it's a historic opportunity for the Iranian people to rise up and overthrow this noxious government.
Right.
But that's
And
not.
there's no particular plan for that actually happening.
Well,
It's
that
more of a
I
hope
can't.
than a
The
plan.
Department of War has been instructed to focus on the military forces of the.
The
Islamic
second piece of
Republic.
this that I want to get into is I think what President Trump meant when he was on the campaign trail saying that we won't go to Iran, go to war with Iran, is the same thing he meant if I was president, the Ukraine war wouldn't have happened. That his mere presence and his policies will stop that. That's the America First agenda. So I guess how did the America First agenda fail in Iran? Because I think the president sincerely meant that. He sincerely meant, you put me in office, I'm going to do things that's going to make sure that we don't go to war with Iran. He failed. We're at war with Iran, and 14 other countries have been dragged into it. So the speech that you laid out was very well said, and if that is what was happening, I'd have some quibbles, but at least we could live with it. But very clearly that agenda failed in Iran. Why?
I don't think, sir, it failed. I mean, the president has been consistent for many years that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and it's a serious
He's also
threat.
been consistent that he would not, that war would, look, anyone can come in and blow stuff up. I mean, that option's been on the table, and that's the option we've been taking a long time. And that was sort of the president's argument was, I'm different. I'm so strong that this isn't going to happen on my watch. And he was wrong. It did.
I don't think the president's wrong. I think the president's demonstrated, I mean, in his first term as well, but certainly in his second term, that he is prepared to use the military instrument. That's why he keeps referring to peace through strength. Of course, right, there's the strength element, and it has to be credible. He has, I have a different assessment, sir. I do think he's used the peace and the diplomacy abundantly over the last year and a half, right? I mean, all the peace deals, et cetera, spent a lot of time Gaza, for instance, and many of these other conflicts. So I think he very much is prepared, and he was willing to talk to the Islamic Republic. But I think that his determination and others, Mr. Kushner, Mr. Witkoff, Rubio, was that
I want to let some others get in here. That's solid enough answer. But again, there's no question that he failed in the sense that, he said there was going to be no war if he was president. Here we are. I mean, those are just facts. So we need to figure out how we got there. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, for this timely hearing. America, I believe, is in a conflict we didn't choose. Dictators with rule of gun who are invading democracies with rule of law. It began, of course, in February 24, 2022, when war criminal Putin invaded Ukraine, and then it was followed up by the puppets of Iran invading Israel on October 7, 2023. With that in mind, I am grateful in your opening statement that you have cited the threat of the Chinese Communist Party in Iran, but the axis of evil includes war criminal Putin resurrecting the failed Soviet Union with mass murder in Ukraine since 2014, as Putin has rigged elections in Belarus and Georgia, with Russian occupation of South Ossetia and Abkhazia of Georgia, while occupying Transnistria of Moldova. Incredibly, President Trump has achieved the 5% GDP by NATO allies, but peace needs more secondary sanctions on war criminal Putin. Additionally, war criminal Putin, I believe, is insulting you. He is mocking you personally, as President Trump has indicated. Putin speaks lovely in the morning and conducts mass murder in the afternoon. With that in mind, Secretary Colby, under the leadership of President Donald Trump, we're preventing endless wars, prioritizing American security and peace through strength. The National Defense Strategy seeks to shift responsibility for security in the Middle East to Israel and our Arab partners and prioritize other threats. And you've indicated the other threats should be focused on the Indo-Pacific. Do you believe that Operation Epic Fury risks wasting the department's limited resources needed to deter war with China?
Mr. Wilson, I think that the Operation Epic Fury is actually an example of exactly what was talked about in the strategy. The threat posed by the Islamic Republic of Iran is explicitly detailed, and also the ability for the president to be able to take effective action against those threats. It's actually a validation of the approach towards allies and partners, because we see right now, obviously, Israel, a model ally, really taking the fight.
But in the meantime,
but also, if I could conclude, also
we're going to maintain every effort in success for Operation Epic Fury.
Absolutely, we're committed to making sure that Operation Epic Fury is a success.
And indeed, an extraordinary development today, to me, Iran has attacked Azerbaijan and attacked Syria. I am confident President Ilham Aliyev and the president of Azerbaijan, and Ahmad al-Shara, president of Syria, that Azerbaijan and Syria now will take action against Iran, which again adds to our capabilities of reducing the threat by Iran. Additionally, war criminal Putin continues, and our allies in the NATO flank face sustained pressure. Congress is aligned with the clear objectives. Congress appropriated $400 million for the European Capacity Fund to strengthen regional deterrence and partner capability. What is the policy's recommendation for using the $400 million appropriated in the European Capacity Fund?
Sir, I'd have to take that back. I'm not familiar with the specific issue, but I'll commit to promptly getting back to you on that, sir.
Indeed. You set the policy guidance for the security cooperation, and I would urge you that indeed these funds should be used to support the brave and courageous people of Ukraine. Hey, for 4 years, they've stood up to a murderous dictator. I was in Kyiv in December before the invasion, and the entire planning was resistance and guerrilla warfare. The people of Ukraine have stood up for 4 years, and criminal Putin has actually lost nearly 1 million troops killed and wounded. And every effort should be made to back up our Ukrainian allies. And the intent of the $400 million Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, which was authorized in the NDAA. Additionally, President Trump has made it clear that the Baltics and Poland are model NATO allies. The current force posture must be maintained for the benefit of American deterrence and commitment to the eastern flank, from our allies of Bulgaria and Romania to Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And so I'm just, again, so hopeful that indeed policies will reflect the axis of evil needs to be defeated. And it's war criminal Putin, it's the soon-to-be totally removed regime in Tehran, and the Chinese Communist Party. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, gentleman. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Colby, in the unclassified NDS that, again, was just issued about a month ago, on page 11, it states, quote, "The Iran's regime is weaker and more vulnerable than it has been in decades, and that their axis of resistance is similarly devastated." For anyone who understands the English language, your department clearly explicitly downgraded the threat that Iran poses to our nation. Yet suddenly on February 28th, just a few weeks later, that all changed. Epic Fury was launched. 6 service members have lost their lives because of, in my opinion, a gross failure of force protection. And there still is no coherent explanation of what caused the change and what is the end game. And that's why if you look at public opinion polls over the last week across the board, there's been no rally around the flag reaction by the American public. First of all, they kind of took you at your word, and President at his word when he said that the nuclear threat was obliterated just a few months ago. And now suddenly we're engaged in a war, which again, for a lot of people, feels very much like past experiences, which didn't end very well. I want to also, for a moment, just focus on the NDS's sort of almost insulting comments about burden sharing by our European allies in NATO. Again, when you laid out in the NDS, what are the homeland security threats? What's the threats in the Western Hemisphere? There's not a word in there about the fact that Putin, even in the middle of the Ukraine war, has still been increasing his investment in its nuclear forces. General Giat from the Northern Command, when he testified this past year in 2025, when he was asked the question, again, in a public setting, what are the threats to the homeland?
To the freedom and the liberty of people in the country.
Well, and
yes, by all means.
Forgive me if I'm not as sharp as I should be on that case, but I believe that Scalia's issue in that case was the compulsion. The federal government cannot compel state actors to carry out federal function. But what we're trying to achieve is the voluntary assistance. And take immigration out of the context. When I was prosecuting cases, we used local law enforcement all the time in federal investigations, whether it was drug trafficking, firearms trafficking, humans, whatever, and relying on their expertise, their actions. That's more in line with what we're trying to codify here, right? That states cannot preclude local actors from voluntarily engaging with federal law enforcement.
Okay, so the reclaiming my time here.
Yes.
Under the 287G program, right now, it's perfectly possible for any state or locality that wants to participate in this to do it. As you well know, the question is, must they be compelled to do it? Or put differently, according to the language of this bill, does a state or local government?
Gentleman yield?
Yeah.
Well, you said it's perfectly proper for them to do it now, and they can do it now, except in your state. My understanding, I just talked to some of the sheriffs from your great state.
Oh,
and they said they are being prohibited by their state from engaging in 287G.
But that's American federalism, Mr. Chairman, as you understand.
Well, you just said that they can do it if they want. No, the locality can do it if they want. In your state, they can't because the state's coming after them. And we want to say, you should be able to do that under our law.
The localities, as you know, under American federalism, and the Supreme Court case law is perfectly clear on this, report to the state governments. The state governments create the municipality. So some states want to participate, some don't. And then some say it's up to the municipalities and some don't. That's a question of federalism. And I've not opined on what my personal policy position is on this at all. So despite all of the attacks I'm drawing from my friends. Well, I'm saying constitutionally, we can't do this.
So extrapolating that, if a sheriff's deputy arrests an American citizen with a trunk load of methamphetamine, is that unable to be prosecuted federally?
Of course that can be prosecuted federally.
So that's cooperation with the local law enforcement at a state level that's prosecuted or handled federally. So why can't that be extended in this context with the enforcement of immigration laws?
Oh, it certainly can be if what you're saying is that localities or states can make the decision to participate in the 287G agreements, as many do.
But they're precluded from doing so in sanctuary jurisdictions. That's the problem that I have with it.
Well, and this is why I come back to the Prince decision and the other anti-commandeering decisions of the Supreme Court, which says that the states retain their power over their own resources, their own taxes, and their own employees. And that's all that these people are saying. And if anybody's violating federal law, then prosecute them for it. If they violate federal law, they should be prosecuted.
Question occurs on the amendment. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. I knew there was someone else, but it wasn't written on my list. I've not forgotten. Briefly forgot. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
That's a safe bet, Mr. Baumgart.
Thank you. And I will be brief. I am enjoying this conversation and certainly leave it to my guest colleagues to explain why the ranking member is wrong. And I have a lot of respect for the ranking member's positions, his intelligence. I just do want to make one comment about sarcasm. You attack the use of sarcasm on our side to illustrate this point. I've been on this committee now for 14 months, and I've heard you use sarcasm and use it well several times, even today, and that's okay. Because,
Using it and using it well are two different things.
Let me just conclude by saying it was Oscar Wilde that said sarcasm is oftentimes the lowest form of wit, but the highest form of intelligence.
Yeah.
So, and with that, I yield.
He attacked sarcasm with sarcasm, and his amendment is now the question before us. All those in favor of the amendment offered by the gentleman from Maryland say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I'd seek a recorded vote, please, Mr. Chairman,
Recorded vote being requested. The clerk will call the roll
on the 10th Amendment.
Mr. Jordan.
on the amendment offered by the gentleman who used sarcasm. No.
Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Issa.
No.
Mr. Issa votes no. Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock. Mr. McClintock votes no. Mr. Tiffany. Mr. Massey. Mr. Roy. Mr. Fitzgerald. Mr. Fitzgerald votes no. Mr. Klein. Mr. Klein votes no. Mr. Gooden. Mr. Van Drew. Mr. Nels. Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore votes no. Mr. Kiley. Mr. Kiley votes no. Ms. Hageman. Ms. Hageman votes no. Ms. Lee. Mr. Hunt. Mr. Fry. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Knott. Mr. Knott votes no. Mr. Harris. Mr. Onder. Mr. Onder votes no. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt votes no. Mr. Gill. Mr. Gill votes no. Mr. Baumgartner. Mr. Baumgartner votes no. Mr. Raskin.
Aye.
Mr. Raskin votes aye. Mr. Nadler. Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren. Ms. Lofgren votes aye. Mr. Cohen. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Swallow. Mr. Liu. Ms. Jayapal. Ms. Jayapal votes aye. Mr. Correa. Ms. Scanlon. Ms. Scanlon votes aye. Mr. Neguse. Ms. McBath. Ms. Ross. Ms. Ross votes aye. Ms. Ballant. Ms. Ballant votes aye. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes aye. Ms. Kamlager-Dove. Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Goldman. Ms. Crockett. Mr. Harris, you're not recorded. Mr. Harris votes no. Ms. McBath, you are not recorded. Ms. McBath votes yes. Mr. Gooden votes no.
Clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 9 ayes and 16 noes.
Amendment is not agreed to. Who seeks recognition? The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk report.
I reserve.
Point of order reserved by the gentleman from California.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a
Without
substitute.
objection, the amendment be considered as read. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment would ensure that states and localities have access to essential funds and grant programs to combat human trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault, and sexual abuse, regardless of their policies on immigration enforcement, which is ultimately the responsibility of the federal government. The idea that we would deprive state and local governments access to these important funds is unfathomable to me. There are many reasons why state and local governments don't want to work with ICE. We've seen just this past year how cooperation can impact the willingness of immigrant communities to report crimes. I entered into the record some articles from Texas. In Utah, a man set his house on fire, killing himself, his partner, and their children. His partner's family said she kept silent about the abuse that she had suffered at his hands because she was afraid of being deported. In Tennessee, the number of victims seeking help from police department's Family Safety Center dropped